Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine, even though there's not a soul around? In the dark, where silence becomes louder than your own thoughts, things happen that cannot be explained. These stories are not fiction, not bedtime stories. They are real nightmares that happen to ordinary people just like you. Listen carefully, because the next twist of fate may be waiting around your corner. Okay, I never really post anything on Reddit, mostly just reading, so please excuse me if I do, or say anything that isn't common courtesy here in around I female at the time was living in Nebraska. Where I grew up, I lived in the largest city in Nebraska, but it was still essentially surrounded by corn and wheat fields. The city was expanding, so rich folks started building huge houses with giant properties on the edge of town as things proceed to grow. All of that being said, I had a good friend whose parents' house was one of those big ones right on the blurring line between the fields and the city. My friends and I were constantly hanging out at his place because it was fun. They had tons of property to ride excess on a hot tub, a huge living room for us to watch sports and have reality TV binge sessions, etc. Plus his parents were super cool. We could drink out there as long as we stayed at the house. It was tons of fun, even though I was and am quite scared of the dark, so I would just not go outside after a certain time because there was little lighting and the nearest neighbor was about a mile away. I always felt a weird energy driving to and from his place if it was late at night, but never had anything happen until one night the drive out. There was a long winding two-way road that had thick trees on both sides, and you passed one of the city's largest cemeteries on the way. Barely any lighting, of course, besides the street lamps. Every once in a while, and in very little traffic, it's all inherently a bit creepy, and I'll admit to having sped through the section of road many times to get through it as quickly as possible. This specific night was perfect spring weather, so I was driving with my windows down, listening to music, and it was around PM. I was coming around one of the curves in the road when I had to essentially slam my brakes on right in front of me in the middle of the road, maybe yards away. It was what looked like a family again. Picture a completely pitch black road with thick forest on both sides and only my headlights to show what's in front of me. This was a family of three for a tall, slim woman, an average height / weight man, a child, short hair, but couldn't tell the gender based on the clothing and couldn't see their face, maybe around years old. And the mother was pushing a _ stroller. Their clothes looked normal, not tattered, but not nice. They also were not carrying any kind of light source, meaning before I arrived behind them in my car. They've been walking in the pitch black. They're all facing away from me, walking completely silent in the middle of the street the same direction I was heading. I had turned my music down to hear if they were speaking, had music playing, etc. They didn't. The hairs of my arms immediately stood up. I came to a stop in the road behind them, obviously, and just sat there for a moment to let them move. They seemed to be completely unaffected by me and didn't even turn their head slightly, nor did they attempt to move out of my way. I literally thought I was going insane or that I was dreaming. It was so surreal before I really had time to fully process and register what I was seeing and how truly strange it was. They all at the same time stopped walking and very slowly turned to face my car. This scared the absolute _ out of me. I honestly didn't even give myself enough time to look at their faces as they turned. I immediately threw my car in reverse and sent it backwards for probably a full seconds before flipping U-turn, nearly running myself off the road and booking it the other direction. The only thing I remember noticing is that the stroller looked to be completely empty. This was the part that sticks in my mind the most. I've never felt terror like that in my life. I checked my rear view mirror probably 1,000 times before getting to a main road and never saw a glimpse of them. In fact, I never saw a glimpse of them ever again. I tried asking my friend and his family about it, only to essentially feel like I was insane because of the way they looked at me. Every time I tell this story, I get one of three reactions. They immediately think I'm _ cuckoo, think I'm lying, or have had something sort of similar happen to them. I really don't care if no one believes me. Honestly, it was and still is the creepiest thing to ever happen to me. I think about it all the time. It was either some weird ass family trying to scare the _ out of someone, a distraction for an attempted robbery, assault, etc. Or it was something more sinister. I'm going to tell myself for probably the rest of my life that it was the first option. You drop your wallet, it's at night, and my wallet is in my ND story. You dropped your wallet. It's at night, and my wallet is in my purse. A little backstory. When I lived with my mom in a ranch-style house on a road that backed up to a large field on the other side. Was the main highway about half a mile down from me. Was a loony farmer, and about a mile on the other side of me was pretty much a crack house. I guess someone used to live there. But it was run down. I'll say that crackheads were pretty quiet other than those two houses we were. Isolated at the time, I was working full-time and going to school full-time. One of my classes ended at p.m. I often wouldn't get home that day of the week until about-ish. I was driving home one night, and I noticed some guy walking down the road. He had a yellow shirt and track pants. I remember his outfit. Because it was stupid, it wasn't weird to see people walking down my road because of the whole crack house thing. But I instinctively looked over at them. When I drove past, he turned and smiled and waved, which freaked me the __ out, so I sped the half-mile home and pulled into the driveway weirded out. I made sure all the doors and windows were secure and then sat on the couch to be a paranoid freak and wait to make sure the dude walked past my house, except he didn't, and there was another guy with him. Dressed in darker clothes, they actually walked on my driveway and started playing around with my car, testing the handles and stuff in my hurry. I forgot to grab my phone from my car. So I was kind of worried that's what they were after until the guy in yellow started approaching my door. I'm freaking out. So I go and wake my mom up, she's BL, and I'm trying to explain the situation when we both hear the doorknob turn very slowly. Good thing it was dead bolted. She got out of the bed, walked to the door. And then yellow, shirt knocked. I perched up on the couch so I could get a good look at him and his friend still in the driveway. The porch light was on. Because of the sensor, my mom said you dropped her wallet. I told my mom that I had my wallet, it was in my purse. So she calmly told him that she had her wallet in. It was too late to be knocking on people's doors. I remember perfectly what he said next, even though this was about years ago. Okay, I'm not a bad guy, just so you know we were all pretty still. No one moved, not even the guy at the door. Not even when the porch light went off. Then he tried the handle again. My mom told me to call the cops. So she could get the gun, and I told her I didn't have my phone. So she walked to the kitchen to grab hers from the charger. She handed me the phone and walked to the bathroom, stared out the window in the backyard. Then she went to her room to grab her Ruger. I was talking to the cops and explaining the situation, all while watching the two guys, explaining that there were two suspicious guys at her door when my mom came back out, and said one in our backyard too, which explained why she had looked out the bathroom window. She glimpsed him from the kitchen and went to get a more discreet look. My mom walked back over to the door with her gun and loudly said, if he tries the handle again, I'm just going to open the door and shoot him, __. Knows why she said that instead of waiting for the cops to arrive, but the guys took off down road. I told her, and she rushed to the bathroom where the guy apparently in the backyard saw his friend running down the road and sprinted off too. They were going in the direction of the crack house. The cops searched our house and our yard and went to the drug house where they found 5 dudes hanging around. One was the yellow shirt guy, and I'm assuming his friends were with him. They did get arrested, and nothing weird like that ever happened again, but was on edge for well, I still make sure. The doors are locked at all times, every day, even though I live in a much nicer area now. Anyway, sorry, it was a bit anticlimactic the dudes got caught. Either way, weird guys who told me you found my wallet, let's not meet. I'm confident I would have become a missing persons case. I apologize in advance since I'm not a good writer, but I'll do my best to share my experience to better paint the picture. Here's a description of myself at the time of this incident years ago. Woman, medium length, bleach blonde hair, curvy LB, wearing black high-waisted tights, and a pink crop top years ago. I was walking home late at night from my friend's house. It was dark, and at the time, I live in a rough part of a large city. I've had many sketchy situations that I've always got myself out of, so I guess I felt sort of invincible, like nothing truly scary could happen to me. When I walk alone, I always stay very alert and aware of my surroundings for my own safety. Just in case, about halfway home, in roughly minutes to my apartment, I noticed a van started telling me. I was used to this since in my city, it's very common for a young woman in a rough area to be propositioned for sex. It's embarrassing how desensitized to this I was. I did my usual and crossed the road so that I'd be walking beside the traffic heading in the other direction. I wasn't scared, just annoyed the van, then turned down a side street, then back onto the road I was on, and pulled up to me. At this point, I still wasn't scared again. This has happened so many times that it never mattered if I was wearing something that showed more skin, or if I was wearing a winter coat zip from just below my chin all the way down to my ankles. The area is notorious for that type of activity. I decided to be firm and told the person sternly, I'm not interested. I noticed there were 2 men in the van. They looked almost identical and may have been twins or brothers. Both men had a very, very dark complexion, dark eyes, and short dark hair. The van didn't move. I was super annoyed and crossed the road again to get away. At this point, I figured this would be enough for them to stop following me. They didn't. They kept circling back every time I crossed the road. I've never had to put that much effort into getting a horny pervert to leave me alone. So this is when I started feeling unsafe. They zip by me at the speed the traffic is flowing, and I yelled at for them to underscore. Off, I thought it finally worked. It had been minutes, and I hadn't seen the van. So I thought I was in the clear. Just in case, I pulled my phone out, was getting ready to call my sister that I lived with. Just then, the van pulled up to me very quickly. Before I even blinked, one of the men jumped out of the van, opened the back door, and approached me quickly in aggressive manner, as if he was about to scoop me up and throw me in the vehicle. The traffic in that area is very inconsistent. It was dead, and I imagine that is what they were waiting for. Just as the man was about to place his hands on me, I tilted my phone and said, "You're being filmed in my live video chat." I gave my friend your license plate number, and the police have been notified. I was so scared, but I didn't let that show. I stayed as calm as I could. The man paused like he was considering if I was just bluffing or telling the truth. So I tilted the phone more as if to give the fake audience a better look at him. He then jumped into the van and they sped off. I've never been the same since that night. I'm afraid of walking alone now. Even in the daytime, stay safe out there. Two creeps in a van. Let's not ever meet. I hope karma finds you both soon. Almost gave a serial killer a car ride. So a little background here, my TH story. Almost gave a serial killer a car ride. Father was in the Army for years, retired, and moved to a very small town in Central Florida. He got bored after a couple of years, and even though he didn't need the money between his retirement while my mom was making it a bookkeeper SL tax prep, he wanted to go back to work. He started working at various gas stations, and it being a small town, the owners wouldn't care if I came there and helped him out with stocking the coolers or even running the register. As long as I didn't sell any beer or smokes, this all took place in the late S and early S. The actual story I'm going to tell took place in, and I remember the date well, because it was shortly after my birthday, and being in Florida, I had just got my learner's permit. My dad would let me drive him to and from work just to get some experience on the road both at day. And at night, I was sitting in my usual spot at a table that was set up along the windows, book in hand, feet propped up, and a Mountain Dew on the table. With some snacks, I would generally spend most of the evening that way, reading books, getting up to run the register, SL stock of the cooler at different times. I remember glancing up because something caught my attention that was unusual, and I realized that a lady was walking up a parking lot from a direction of the interstate. The gas station was right on I. This in itself was really strange because where we were located, you didn't get many people walking, and definitely not walking from the direction of the interstate. I figured she had broken down somewhere and was coming to use the phone to call for a tow truck or something. I was completely wrong. She came into the store, looked around for a few minutes, and I remember getting just a strange and creepy feeling about her. She walked up to the counter and started telling my dad a story about how she had got one stranded and needed a ride up to the next big town up north from us. Ocala was the town. This is important. My dad lets her know that he's working and there's no way that he can take her. She turns and looks at me while she's looking away from him. My dad catches my eye and suddenly shakes his head no. I was so on F Reefus for a second, but then she turns back to my dad and points at me asking if I can take her. My dad responded back that I only had a learner's permit and I wouldn't be able to drive her anywhere and then drive back normally. I would have done it even though it was legal because I done it a few times before already. I didn't argue with my dad that since this was completely out of character for him, he was normally chatty with the customers, but for whatever reason, he was almost curt and dismissive with her. Turns out he had a bad vibe about her from the minute he had seen her walking up the drive. Well, she cusses him out for a minute, and he basically tells her to get out of the store. She slammed the door open. I thought the glass was going to break from how hard she slammed it, and then she stalks out of the store. And down the driveway, I keep an eye on her and continue to watch as she makes her way back up the interstate and then starts up on the northbound on the ramp. Almost a year passes, and I'm in my bedroom less than a week before my TH birthday. I hear my dad yelling from the living room, "Son, get your ass in here." And look at this, I quickly run to the living room and see my dad pointing at the TV. I look at the mug shot of the lady up on the screen, and I immediately remember the lady who had been in the store. Turns out I almost gave a ride to Ain Warrows, who was later convicted of being a serial killer and then later put to death. Still have nightmares about what could have happened. TH story. That time I accidentally dated a sociopath. It has taken me many years to tell this story out of both fear and embarrassment. I share this today as more than simply therapy for myself, but as a warning to all people: be careful who you meet on social media. And my ex-husband and I at the end of a very tumultuous marriage. He and I had been polyamorous for about years before I met this guy. His name was Jez. I met Jez on OkCupid. We hit it off very quickly. After a few weeks of talking, I agreed to meet up with him at a restaurant close to my house. We sat and talked for a few hours before I invited him over to meet my husband. Things went very well, and they seemed to get along. So Jez and I started dating. This guy completely swept me off my feet. Jez was sweet and caring. He enthusiastically listened to every little thing on my mind, engaged and validated me over and over again. He absolutely revered me for my strength and wisdom. He practically worshiped me for all that I was and all I was becoming. He showered me with gifts, flowers, and random good deeds just to make me feel safe, wanted, and cared for. I had never been in a relationship that quite felt like that. It was wonderful. It was as though we had been looking for each other. For years after the first few weeks, he had a meltdown over my polyamorous nature. He, quote, pulled the plug because he said he was already falling for me and couldn't handle sharing me. I stood my ground and accepted this boundary and that fact that I would have to let him go. I left that night sad, but confident that I'd done the right thing for the both of us. The next week, he sent me flowers and a card to my workplace begging for another chance and reassuring me that he would rather try than not and end up regretting it, even though it was scary. He wanted to.